What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And on today's show, we're going to be diving into a lot more NBA draft talk. You guys know I'm really I love NBA draft season, and I've had a lot of great NBA draft analysts and some potential NBA draft prospects on the show. So I'm going to continue with this show, and I got a special guest with me today. Yesterday we got a little bit of a, yesterday he was supposed to be on yesterday, and we had a little bit of some audio technical difficulties, but I'm happy to have him on today's show. My man Richard Stayman from Mavs Draft. What's going on, man?
Not too much. Hoping round two is a little bit more successful. I guess Mavs fans haven't seen round two in a while, so this is a welcome sight.
Yeah. Obviously, yesterday we had a little bit of some audio issues, but I'm happy today. It's gonna be a fun show, and we're all good. All our bars are good, so we're gonna be ready to rock it. But so first of all, how you been? How's everything going on with with all the craziness of quarantine and COVID and no basketball? It's a triple whammy right there.
Man. And I mean, today all the news came out with Jokic,
Yeah, I literally just saw that too.
And two sons got it, and man, I feel like we're about to see so many new cases from athletes. I mean, the cases are higher than ever, for the most part, especially here. We just hit 5,000 in a day, which that's New York numbers. And it's crazy, man. I'm just staying in as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's all you can do. You just gotta. Yeah. I feel like people sometimes are not taking this as serious as they should, and especially in New York, I'm sure you see it too where you're from. I see people just in big groups and just acting like there's nothing, like this disease isn't like it went away, like it's still around, and it's just crazy. I know whenever I go into any type of food place or any type of business, I make sure I made to wear the mask because I just feel safer wearing it. But it's crazy. And then like you said, we just heard Jokic just got it. So I mean that's huge. I don't think people realize how big that is for Denver. I know we still got a little bit more than a month and where the season might happen. But if we start getting big players like that. Like Jokic is a big time player. He's an all-star. He was an MVP candidate last year. That might change the whole dynamic of the Nuggets. He might not. He might just say it's not even worth it for the to do. So do you think if guys like him and then God forbid we see other guys, do you think the NBA just might be like this is just going to be disastrous? I mean, Trevor Ariza is not playing. We saw Bertans. Said he's not playing. There's a lot of guys, Bertans is a free agent too. So that was big, that's big, and will more guys do that as we get closer? So how do you think all this is going to eventually affect, if we do see basketball? Because now it looks like, before it might have been, okay, we're going to get basketball. Now it's like, okay, a lot of guys are getting it, we're still getting guys getting tested positive. A lot of guys are backing out, so we just scrapped it. So how do you feel about all that?
I mean, I've been on the train of cancel the season, unfortunately. And, I mean, I do want the draft to – I miss the fact that it's not in 2 days like it should be. Yeah. But I really do think the best route is get everybody back home, dissolve the season. It really sucks for a lot of guys' legacies, but how much of a legacy is LeBron getting by getting another ring? It's probably going to be the most meaningless ring ever if it happens, maybe since 99 after the lockout season. And
yeah.
I don't know how much value was added back. Like, yeah, you get the money and everything, and money talks, but is that really the big trade-off? And I think we're seeing the 22 teams was a mistake already with, like you said, Bertans sitting out, Ariza, guys on the Suns are getting it. I mean, these guys aren't all going to want to be there. It's pointless. It's like a bona fide summer league for those teams that aren't going to make it.
Yeah. Obviously we all want to see basketball back, and that's everyone. But I don't feel like enough people are actually caring about the athletes and knowing that they're humans too. Yeah, they make 25. Some of these guys are making $30 million, but guess what? They still have a family to take care of, and little kids and stuff, and wives, and to be in a bubble for a couple months to play basketball, is it really worth it? Not seeing your family, and then you got to worry about can I, if I want to see my family, I can't get out of the bubble. you know, and you guys like, you know, I just, a part of me is just like, just scrap it. Just scrap sports for the rest of the year, period. You know, because they're going to have the same issue with football too and stuff, and baseball as well. So, you know, 2020 is already in the shitter, you know, so might as well, you know, let's start fresh 2021 and hopefully, you know, with more testing and more, you know, vaccines and stuff. You know, I'm starting to get to that point where, to me, the health and safety is more important than, you know, winning a championship that people still might not, you know, you might have an asterisk for some people, you know, be like, well, you won it, but half of the Milwaukee Bucks didn't play, or half this team didn't play. So like, did you really know, so it's like at this point, you know, it's tough. It's tough. And I don't know what the solution is, what they got to do, but you know, if it was up to me, you might as well. I would just scrap it. Let's start fresh next year and all that. But we'll see. But we got into a little bit yesterday before all the technical. But we talked about how everything going on and how it affected college basketball and the whole draft process. And for a lot of these guys, as we've seen, we talked about that a little bit, you know, yesterday. As you know, some guys have gone from being irrelevant, and then they get to the conference tournament, NCAA tournament, they skyrocket into a first round pick, you know. Yeah. So how much does everything going on in the world, no conference tournament, no NCAA tournaments, no combines, you know, how has all that affected your evaluation of players?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a classic overthinker. As the draft time comes, normally like at this time, I've full on overthought everything. Like usually until April, May, you know, when the list of names is finalized, that's when like anything before then, I'm not overthinking it. I see what I see, and that's what I think. And now I get to, well, maybe I didn't trust my judgment. Maybe it was bad, even though I was perfectly tuned in. And I'm starting to see a little bit of it now. So I'm right on track, but without the NCAA tournament, you get a lot of teams that, you know, they overreact to one run. You know, we saw Mo Wagner in 2018, Shabazz Napier in 2014. Yeah. I know there's some others that stuck out in a positive way, but you get a lot of those mixed bags. And obviously neither of those guys were even lottery picks that I just named. But every year there's somebody who rises probably a little bit too much compared to what they should have. And the GM got saved with that. But for me, the biggest difference maker is the conference tournaments didn't happen, like for the most part. There were some that completed, but for the ACC, for example, like that was a big one. Those teams have seen each other 2 times already. You see them a 3rd time, and you can absolutely just go out there and destroy your competition, even though they know everything about you. You've had 2 chances, home and away. That speaks volumes. So we didn't get to see that this year, and I think that's more important personally than the NCAA tournament.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's definitely, you know, not seeing conference tournaments is definitely hurts a lot of these guys. So how do you make sure that, you know, like you said before, you know, some guys have, you know, lost, you know, their draft stock rose because of the tournament. How do you decipher, you know, okay, this guy, all right, conference tournament and tournament runs, they had great runs, and okay, I think I see that, you know, transferring to the NBA, and how do you decipher, okay, he just got hot and he shouldn't have went from undrafted or a late second to being a first round? How do you decipher the both?
Yeah, so for me, it's knowing like what they've done before. So if you've seen, like, I'm trying to think of some examples. Like Mo Wagner, I think, had an insanely hot NCAA tournament. Like he way overachieved. If it's like way out of line and numbers are probably, you know, you can pull any 5-game stretch from any player in the draft. There's a reason they're good. Like you'll get a 5-game stretch of absolute dominance. Whether it happens in March or November, that really shouldn't change your mind. Obviously, it's a bigger stage and, you know, the competition is tougher. But not always the case. A lot of these November tournaments that happen can be just as tough. Anthony Edwards, for example, got to number 1 on most boards because of what he did at Maui, where he went off on Michigan State. I forget who else he played. I think it was like Dayton and Kansas were in there. I don't remember who else he played, but that was really good competition. So it's just kind of knowing what's not an outlier and kind of just having your homework done beforehand.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about a draft class. I think it was 2014, the year it was like a lot of the Duke and Wisconsin guys.
Oh yeah,
They both, and I'm a Duke fan. I'm wearing a Duke hoodie right now, but Okafor, you think of Jones, you think of trying to think of the other guy,
Winslow.
Winslow. I
Yep.
mean, Winslow, he's been okay. Tyus is okay. Okafor, you could say that, the whole Philly situation kind of screwed him over, because his year one was pretty good. But then, obviously the big man has kind of, faded away and stuff. And then some of those Wisconsin guys, Kaminsky and Sam Decker, especially. Sam Decker had a tremendous postseason run, and he went from being, I think, a top 20 pick, and I don't even think he's in the league anymore. So those are some situations where you see guys who have good runs and then, not exactly have, translate to being, pros. And some of those guys were, Okafor was a high pick, and some of these guys were very, Kaminsky was a top 10 pick, So those are situations where you can, you have great runs and then, okay careers. I mean, none of those guys are going to be all-stars, but those are certain situations where you see that for sure.
Yeah. No, and like you said, I mean, just because you had a hot run does not mean you're going to be a long-time NBA player. I think the most recent success story from the NCAA tournament is probably, Dante DiVincenzo. And I personally didn't see him as a first-round talent whatsoever. Obviously, I'm wrong. He's had a really good start to his career. But, yet again, are you getting an all-star or are you just getting a role player? And that was something that teams had done their homework. This is where the NCAA tournament exposes them, is if you see someone for the first time, kind of what I was hinting at earlier, they're going to look a lot better if you know nothing about them, and that's when they get hot. If they had a horrible January and they do that, and you know that, and you've seen them at the games, your perception of what happened changed.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think we're going to see in this draft, especially this draft, that there's the ranges of picks, guys' boards. Like we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Some guys have LaMelo 1, LaMelo 12, or Obi. I saw today someone had Toppin at 27. But I've seen people have Toppin top 3. So I feel like, this draft is such a wide range where you can see guys go all over the place. Mm-hmm. There's no definitive number one. Everyone's number one's different. You can see Anthony Edwards, Wiseman, this is LaMelo, Killian. This so wide range. So how do you just figure when you're constructing a big board? How are you Are you just say, all right, here's my bets. Here's who I think are the best players. Are you just are you mixing in other people's boards and be like, okay, hey, this is where I think he'll go, where he'll fit? How do you just think? Because man, I'm having such a hard time trying to put my big board because it's just so hard to figure out especially with everything going on with everything going on. How do you figure that out?
Yeah. So for me, I just try not to think of where I think they'll get drafted because a lot of times I have somebody, there's 4 people I'm looking at in my top 25 that I don't see them going top 25, probably not even first round. Their stock is low, but they're gems. That's the point of putting a hidden gem there. I completely ignore where I think they'll go. But building for this year, the top 10 for me, it stops at 9. There's 9 definitive guys who I know for a fact these guys are locked in this range. They can't fall any further. And then after that, you could make an argument pretty much from 10 to 25, any order. And then after that, I'm not kidding, 25 or 26 through 100, dude, it's tight. It's crazy. I've pushed them up 40 spots in one time, and it's after watching, if you watch a couple games in a row, it happens. It's incredibly tight this year, and that cannot be overstated.
Have you seen a draft like this where it's just so tight from those spots from what you said from 26 to on? Have you ever seen a draft like that where it's so tight where one guy could drop to being, pick, number 70 or move up, to being the 25th, have you ever seen a draft like that?
The closest I've seen would be 2013, but that's not really a fair comparison because those guys weren't they were so hit or miss. I don't see hit or miss with these guys. Are they going to be stars or are they just going to be role players? And that's the difference with 2013. And that was only at the top. After that, it was just all over the place, not really tight. But in terms of tightness, 2011 has to come to mind when, there was a debate who was better, 1 or 60 with Isaiah Thomas or Kyrie Irving for a really long time. And something like that could really happen this year where number 1 may not be the best player. Hell, the top 10 may not even have the best player, or the lottery may not even have the best player.
Yeah, I think with this draft too, I know people have said, well, there's not a lot of star power. I mean, not guys who you could see as all-stars. You don't know which guy who could be an all-star. But this is a very deep draft in a way too, because there's a lot of guys who you could see definitely being good players. We don't know if they're gonna be all-stars, but I feel like this draft, you can get good players late first round that could be, contributors. Have you seen that where like, okay, well, I don't know how many true blue chip, and you said you had 3 blue chip guys, right?
Yeah.
You had 3 blue chip guys, and but this is a draft where you could still get a very good player. We don't know how many guys are going to be all-stars, but you still can get a guy who can contribute. Have you seen that where you got guys in second round that still could be contributors? I've seen that with this, like, okay, this guy in second round, I mean, that could be a starter, a bench, or at least a top 8, rotational player.
Yeah, and normally when you talk about guys in the second round, for me at least, I'm kind of overselling myself to justify them being drafted kind of thing. And but this year it's natural. I almost have to talk myself down rather than up, which is something I can't ever remember doing before. And if you're a good team, like, this is the time you want to trade into the second round, buy a pick. The Sixers, I think, have 4 second-round picks. The Celtics have 3. There's a lot of teams that just have too many picks, not enough roster spots, and these teams like Houston should be buying in. I mean, other teams, I'm blanking on who doesn't have a pick, but there's a lot of opportunities for some good teams to find some quality role players. Like, it reminds me, I think this might also have been 2011. Whenever Chris Middleton was drafted, he was just, a nobody. He was drafted in the 40s, and obviously now he's an all-star. You're going to find that's not going to be uncommon. I think once every 10 picks, you're going to have that in the second round,
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, I mentioned before your blue chip guys, and you have 3 of them. So just quickly go into who you think are, who are your blue chip guys for this draft.
Yeah, so in order, my number 1 player is Anthony Edwards from Georgia. And then I've got Onyeka Okongwu from USC and LaMelo Ball, who played in the NBL, the Rising Stars League.
So with Okongwu, what is the biggest between him and Wiseman? What stands out with him more than Wiseman? Because obviously a lot of people love Wiseman. They love because he's built like Tarzan, and he's a freak, and we've seen his high school tape. But obviously we only saw 3 games of him in Memphis, so we didn't get to really see that much tape, and he only played a game where it was actually against legit competition. So how did you come up with that, picking him over Wiseman?
Yeah, so I think for Wiseman's my number 6 player, so it's not like a massive gap. He did benefit, honestly, I would say, from not playing so much, because the value of big men, just unless you're absolutely dominating in a way like Zion was, and he's not even like a big man, I wouldn't call. And he doesn't have that negative of not dominating. The stock doesn't fall as easily now that we didn't get to see the negatives. Yeah. So my difference for Okongwu and Wiseman really just comes down to risk. You're getting a lot safer of a player. You're getting like a baby Bam, which is the exact modern center in the NBA.
Great comp.
And it's not like, perfect comp, but it's that style. I think I'm really confident in his passing, especially from like the top of the key, which is where a lot of teams start their plays with their centers. And I think that's something he does really well, and I buy the shot translating. And that's obviously something Bam doesn't even have yet. With Wiseman, if he gets the shot, that's a massive bonus. But I think he's going to dominate the interior. So those 2 guys are still guys I'm comfortable taking in the top 10. I've seen people put Wiseman at the end of the first, and I think that's so extreme. If he's there at 10, you take him. Like, that should be the lowest he falls, unless there's character issues, of course.
Yeah, and this, I mean, obviously they had the situation in Memphis, but you can't really judge his character off that situation at all. So, and I think with when people do that, they drop him is simply because they believe the narrative that bigs are extinct.
Yep.
And which is wrong, because you still need big guys to win. I mean, you still need big guys to win. You still need a couple big guys. I mean, the Lakers have a bunch of big guys. I mean, they wouldn't have been where they are without those big guys. With Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. And they had DeMarcus Cousins too, so they had 3 big guys at 3 7-footers. So you still need big guys. They have to do the little stuff. They got to do the picks. They got to rebound. You still need all that aspect. So I think it's very lazy when I see people drop them like that. And there's another a big man that that I seen drop a lot. And before I get back to, I want to get into this first. But Vernon Carey, obviously, I'm a Duke fan. I love Vernon. I think he's very skilled. But I saw someone say he's not even going to get drafted, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And it also folded into their like, well, big men's are extinct. I was like, he's too talented to get not drafted. He still was great this year, And I think people look at, how Jahlil Okafor came, and they feel like that's going to happen to him. And at times I feel like, I hope that doesn't happen to him. I just feel like he's too skilled to just be an undrafted player. So how do you feel about Big Vern?
Dude, so I think people overthought him too. There's a significant portion of Twitter that is, I like to call overthinking Twitter.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm a victim. Like I said, I overthink a lot of my stuff, but not to like that degree. I think he was the most productive freshman at the least. He might have been the most productive player because he averaged like 28 and 15 per 40, which is insane. So I have him in my 40s. I actually just posted a scouting report of him. I was kind of harsh. Because I don't like a lot of what he does on defense. The defense really scares me.
Yeah, the
like,
defense is bad.
That's it. Everything on offense, fine. Like I think he's going to be just fine there. For me, I think he 100% gets drafted. There's not a question in my mind. That's an outrageous take to say he's not going to get drafted. But I do think a team that comes to mind for me, Dallas, I wrote, is they're a perfect fit. Despite, there's been a narrative that the Mavs hate post-ups. It's not true. They just don't have anybody to post up.
They have no one to post up.
And the Mavs were successful, 5-6 years ago before Dirk finally took his last turn. They ran, bench centers 15, 20 minutes, and they were hyper-efficient players. And that's the role Vernon Carey is going to fill. I mean, he did that in Duke already. And that's what you want from big men. You don't want them necessarily to be, unless they're generational talents, you don't want them to be the star and having the ball in their hands all the time. I get that.
No.
And that's more of what the big man is dying thing is. But Vernon Carey fully fits that bill. I think he can completely be that person who comes in 15, 20 minutes and just scores
off the bench big that could score, could rebound a little bit. Obviously, like you said, he's going to struggle in pick and roll situations where he's got a guard. He's not fleet of foot. He's like his dad. His dad was a left tackle in the NFL, so he's got those left tackle feet. But I still, like I said, he's going to get drafted. That's just what I don't want to talk about because it came up in my head and I saw someone have him in the 60s or 70s and I just was like, there's no way. I mean, he's going to get drafted. Whether it's the end of the first, second round, he's dead going to get drafted. But getting back to your blue chip guys, LaMelo Ball. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but LaMelo Ball obviously is the most polarizing player in this draft. We've known about him, it feels like forever, and he's only 18, 19 years old. So just talk to me about LaMelo and just what he can bring to a team and what worries you about him, because there's things that I'm worried about, especially being a Knicks fan, and the thought of him coming to New York, it excites me, but it scares the living crap out of me because that could be really bad. That combination. And Big Papa, LeVar is talking a lot of stuff lately about he wants all three boys, and they just signed to Rock Nation Sports. So all those New York ties, and it feels like he's that the Knicks are going to try to make that happen. But just talk to me a little bit about LaMelo Ball and all his stuff.
Yeah, so as you said, Melo is a little bit polarizing, far and away the most polarizing player to come out in a really long time. What you get with him is, if you remember when Lonzo came out, people said he was a generational passer, which is probably true. Mm-hmm. I would say LaMelo is more generational because what LaMelo can do off pick and rolls and out of set plays is far more advanced than Lonzo had done coming into the draft. And LaMelo is a full year younger, essentially. I think it's 8-12 months than Lonzo was. So LaMelo doesn't even turn 19 until August. So
it's crazy to think, because I feels like I said, we feel like we've been watching him for years already.
Yeah. Yep. Like when he scored 90 or something in high school, that was only 3 years ago.
Only 3 years? Oh my God. That's crazy.
And with him, though, the issue that he has to overcome, because he's going to be getting, 10, 9, 8, as his stat line. That's fully in the realm of possibility, rookie year. Mm-hmm. The issue he has to overcome is just shooting. The shot is probably near broken. But Lonzo has overcome it. So, I mean, who knows what
Lonzo
he's been
fixes.
working with. And he's not similar to – like, he's similar, but he's not similar to Lonzo. Like, he's not a player I would use as a comparison. They have a similar play style, but they're not similar players. LaMelo is much craftier, I would say, and much more fearless going to the basket as a scorer.
Yes.
And also his defense is kind of a disaster, but it's not – doesn't mean the defense will be a disaster. He knows what to do. He just doesn't do it.
He needs technique. He needs to get good coaching around him that teaches him how to play because he has the long arms and he does get steals. He knows how to play the passing. He just he just gets a little lackadaisical. And I think that's something you have to really work with him is, but if you have good veterans, maybe that could work. But I think that's a issue that people have with LaMelo is that when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's very lackadaisical. He's not very great off the ball, as far as, getting open and stuff. I think that's what people really worry about with him, with LaMelo.
Yeah, and I think it's all, like you said, dude, it's all coachable. He knows how to read plays, which probably hurts him a bit more than it should because he gambles because of it. But I mean, it's all about coaching wherever he lands.
Yeah, and hopefully, maybe he comes to New York and that'll be oh my God, I just thinking about that. With all the media here, man. But that's the thing. I think another people are worried about is, LeVar and especially in New York, where we have 87 million papers and there's media all over the place. And I think that's something that that's worried me a little bit is that. And then how he criticized Lonzo with the Lakers with Walton. Luke Walton. So, so that's stuff. I mean, he's been quiet in New Orleans with Lonzo there. So hopefully he could say, but New York, it's bright, even though we're on lockdown still, but it's still bright and, he likes to talk. So we'll see. We'll see how that, we'll see how that works with Lamar. But he's definitely a player that's, his ceiling is crazy. He could legit be a 25-10 type player. He's just supremely talented. But I want to talk about another guy overseas, Killian Hayes. He's another guy that's, one of the top, guards in this draft. Another guard that I love. He's tremendous. But how do you feel about Killian Hayes? And how have you looked at him? And will he be able to translate, coming to the pros?
Yeah, so I like him a lot. My issues with him, there's really only two issues, and both kind of are rooted in his youth, which is that he's left-hand dominant.
Yeah,
like he heavily relies on that left hand, but even though teams know he's going left hand, he still beats them, which always like his offense is insane. I mean, it's advanced. I think he's also 18, might be fresh 19.
Yeah.
But he mean pick and roll, which is obviously the most run play in basketball now. And I buy his shot. So those are two really important things that I automatically put him above everybody else. Like they're elite. And then also his defense. His defense is pretty bad. But like I said, it's about his youth. I mean, how many young skinny players do you know that can beat a pick and roll on defense at point guard?
No, not many.
Probably none.
Yeah. So those, like I said, all these things for a lot of these guys can be taught with good coaching. You go to the right team, they could figure it out. And, with team defense, you could kind of hide them too. How some teams hide with their point guards that don't really play great defense. But I love Killian Hayes. I've watched a lot of his stuff, and I feel like his game is going to really translate. He reminds me a little bit of like a D'Angelo Russell. He kind of has that kind of game. Obviously left-handed dominant, and I think he could definitely work on the right stuff. His right hand and go more to the right. Because even when he goes right, he uses his left hand. The times he does go right, he still uses. So he's got to work on obviously, being a little ambidextrous and doing that. But I think he's definitely, a guard that I would love to have, and especially in New York. But this draft, there's a lot of good guards in this draft. This is a very good, draft for guards. So just run me quick. Who are some of your top 5 guards in this draft?
Yeah, so my top 5 guards are Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Killian Hayes, and this is almost all in a row. Cole Anthony from North Carolina. I know you're a Duke fan, so I apologize. But and then I've also got Tyrese Maxey and Tyrese Halliburton right there. And then just as an honorary, I know you said only 5. But then there's Kyra Lewis, who's really climbing on a lot
Kyra
of people.
Lewis, yeah, he's
And what's
climbing.
crazy is there's still 4 more guards on my first round rankings. So,
Who
like
are
those
they?
are guards. Yeah. What'd you say?
Who are they? Your guards.
So the other ones are RJ Hampton, who's like a combo guard.
Combo, yeah.
Theo Maladon from, I think he's from
The
Germany.
overseas guy, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then Grant Riller. And okay, so there were 3 more. And then there's Trey
Right.
Jones is really close.
Trade
So
off. So Grant Riller, I've talked to a few guys about him. I got on him a few months ago. Another NBA draft guy had told me about him. I'm like, okay, I gotta watch more. Obviously, College of Charleston is not a hotbed. You know, there's not. It's not you're not gonna see a lot of guys go pro from college, but you know, he's obviously a tremendous offensive player. So how do you evaluate him, knowing he did not play great competition? You know, to say the least. He didn't play in a great conference, you know, a big time conference, but he's rising. He's rising. Yeah. I've seen people have him in the top 10, you know, and where a few months ago he probably was, you know, second round, maybe, you know, around that, undrafted possibly. Just talk to me about him, because it seems like he's really skyrocketed in the last, you know, month or so.
Yeah, so he's definitely one of the guys that's benefited from this hiatus, I would say. So for him, the first thing that his offense is, I mean, it's ready. It's fully ready. He's a smart kid. He has an elite first step. I mean, you're not beating him. You're not getting him beat off the dribble. You know, like you have no chance. If you're an average foot speed guard on defense, you're not getting beat. The jump shot's a little bit awkward, but I mean, it works. And he has NBA range. I've seen it multiple times on catch and shoot. Like, he shoots from the logo. He loves it. And like, those two things are just incredible. He creates space. He has incredible vision. And he runs a mean pick and roll too. Like, he just knows how to manipulate defenses, and with a bunch of skill as well. So, like, all of that together, it's just the makings of a really solid offensive point guard. His defense could go either way. Not really sure how to diagnose it, because one man shows aren't exactly going to try hard on defense 90% of the time. So it's a little bit hard to gauge where he is on that end. But on offense, I mean, he's a star.
Yeah, I mean, he could definitely light it up. I mean, his range is crazy. I mean, he's definitely not afraid to shoot that thing once he gets the ball in his hand. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how he translates to the pros. Because, like you said, you know, I feel like people don't put competition, you know, factor that in when they do scouting a lot, because that's a big thing, especially with the overseas guys too. You know, that level of competition is important too. But, you know, with Ryler, you know, not playing in a big conference, seeing how he could translate, going to the pros and see, you know, if that adapts. But I want to get into some of the international guys, you know. Who are some of the guys that you like international? And I'm talking about true international, not LaMelo and the true international guys. Who do you like overseas?
So I really like Theo Maladon, who I brought up earlier. I think he's a really gifted offensive player with long arms, and I think his defense will work too. Runs a mean pick and roll, and I buy the jump shot. That skill combination is pretty hard to find in 18-year-olds. So I think personally a team like 15 to 25 would be really well suited to take him. Another point guard. It's shocker with this class.
A lot of point guards in this draft, man.
Is and I'm probably going to botch the name, but he's a French point guard. His name's Abdoulaye Njoy, I think is how you say it. I probably botched it. So
that's okay. There's going to be a lot of botching with these names. A lot of these names I cannot pronounce.
So my comparison, I started watching him actually right after the 2017 draft. And my initial reaction was, this guy's Frank Ntilikina again. And like, they're very similar, except you take away, I would say, a little bit lesser of a defender, really good defender, but not nearly the shooter. Like, Frank was a good shooter in coming out, heading into the draft. I don't buy his jump shot whatsoever. Enjoy. So that's a concern for me, but everything else is really good. I mean, he's got 7 foot plus wingspan, and he's 6'5", 6'6". Like, the length checks out. You're buying the tools, you know, that's what you're getting with him. It's another one that has gone up a lot of people's boards. I'm actually not super high on him. But Leandro Bolmaro,
I've heard.
He's one of the names that's really climbing right now. So he's an incredible passer. Like, he's got insane vision. He's probably the second best passer behind LaMelo in this class, I would say, and he's a really good defender. but man, the jump shot has a very, very long ways to go in terms of development. Like that's going to be his fatal flaw.
Yeah.
So for whoever drafts him, and he's going to go top 30, top 40, I would guess. He's a project in that department, but everything else he's NBA ready.
Yeah, for sure. What about Denny?
Yeah, so Denny
he's another guy. Yeah, he's another guy that's possibly could be a top 5 pick. You know, he's definitely another a prospect that's really high. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, so I never know what to make of these guys who get these Instagram and Twitter videos of their jump shot changing. You see it every year.
Yeah. I know the video. I know the exact video you're talking about. Yeah.
But immediately upon the Israeli league returning, he started sinking jump shots. So now I'm like I told you, I'm in peak overthinking season.
Yeah.
So like, dude, that's where I am.
Yeah.
But everything else about his game checks out. Like I love his playmaking. He's a really good,
tremendous
playmaker for the size, and he's incredibly gifted on defense. Like he knows where to be. He's a good athlete, and he's a good slasher too because he's a good athlete. So really checks out on.
Do you think with that, because obviously there's going to be a lot of people who think about when you think about overseas guys, you think you're not, you could think about Luka, you could think about Porzingis, but then there's always those other guys, the Nicholas Titishvilis. I remember like in 2003, I'm trying to think of the guys recently, but there's a lot of guys who just haven't panned out, So what's different about Denny that? Is it the defense that's different? Because you see a lot of these overseas guys, they're not defensively, especially the taller guys, the scorers that we think are going to be good scorers enough. They don't defensively, they're not there. Is that the difference with Denny from most guys coming from overseas?
So for Denny, for me, it's the fact that his combination of skills is super unique. Like if you remember in I think 2014 when Dario Saric came out, what he was advertised was not at all what he was, but on paper, I mean, he had one of the most unique skill sets, point forward, who is a really capable defender he was 6'10", and that's like a dream. And I think Denny is actually all of that, except he's 6'9", 6'8", 6'9", something like that. So for me, that's always been a highly coveted trait, is that skill, size, defense combo, with often, just all of that blend is really unique. I think if he hits, he's one of the most unique players in the draft, and if you think about it, all of those things, the tall, defensive-minded playmaker is kind of what Draymond is, right? Like, if you get someone who fits that bill as a super glue guy, the do-it-all, whatever, you're set up for winning so well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you need a team around him to make him most effective, but overall, I mean, if you can get him that type of player, you're winning,
Yeah. And I think a team like you just mentioned, Draymond, the team like the Warriors, that would be a perfect fit for him. The defense would definitely, help big time. And with Draymond there, I mean, he could take his game to the next level and contribute right away if they keep the pick. So that's definitely a good fit for him if he's still there wherever they're picking. But how many mock drafts have you done? I know we don't have the lottery yet, but how many mock drafts have you done?
So I've only done a few, actually. I'm going to be releasing one later this week. But, man, it is so hard. The second round just stumps me because at that point, like I said at the beginning, it's after 10. I'm like, damn, I can talk myself into 20 different people right now.
Yeah, that's tough.
By the time I've done that, it's like been an hour. So,
yeah.
And I'm like, damn, I don't know what to do. I don't want to get grilled for like choosing someone, and it's hard to balance what I would do and what I think will happen. Like that is such a
that's hard to do.
Yeah, so it's very difficult with that.
yeah, I know that's definitely tough. But how many guys do you have first round grades on? Have you gotten that far yet?
So I mean, I would say I keep my top 30 as the first round grades unless I really go over. This year, though, I think you can talk me into 39 is the number that I have where that's where the drop-off hits, maybe 40, just looking over it again. So, yeah. I mean,
that's how deep – that's how, I know, like you said before, people really – they don't think this draft's great, but then you're saying me that there's possibly 40 guys that, how could be a first-round grade. So, that shows that this draft is solid, definitely a solid draft.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I mean, 2011 was one of those classes where people thought it was really bad. It was perceived poorly after Kyrie.
Mhm.
This year is probably the same thing after, a certain amount of picks. Like, it's whatever. But no, like if you are smart and you did your homework, you're going to get rewarded in this draft. That's what kind of draft class this is.
Yeah, for sure. So, so before I let you go, just give me a couple like deep sleepers that you think that only you probably know about them or something.
So, man, a year ago, that would have been Desmond Bain. I was all in on him. He was my guy. I had him in my top 40 if he had entered last year, and he was in like a secondary combine. Like he wasn't even, in the NBA draft combine or anything. But so obviously I can't use him now. I would say, man, there's two guys that really jump out to me. One, Emmett Williams of LSU. So he's kind of hiding in plain sight. I've been on a tweet storm about him lately. So if you go to my timeline, you'll see he's the 6'6" center from LSU. He's second tallest player on the starting five, but played that Rockets kind of center where he stretches the floor. His jump shot's really slow, but that's his flaw. That's it. So he's a freak athlete, super long, NBA body ready, rotates really well on defense, passes well, can kind of handle the ball. Like he checks all the boxes except just, like I said, hiding in plain sight. He's definitely one of those guys. And then I would say another that's just really hiding for whatever reason, just hasn't gotten the attention he deserves. I thought with this hiatus, he would be one of the guys to benefit is Paul Reed from DePaul. Unfortunately, I'm not the only one on him. He's like people compare him to Siakam because he has one flaw and same thing. He cannot shoot. I mean, it's bad. But everything else he does at an incredible level. And if you want my deep, deep sleeper that I would say only I've got, I'll give you one. So his name's Christian Doolittle from Oklahoma.
Oh, I've heard. No, yes, I've heard of him. Yes. I actually another podcaster that I've had on the show. I actually had him on his show. So that's how I heard about him, and I started watching.
I'd have to change the answer then.
So maybe it's not that deep.
Dang, I'll give a different one. So there's another guy from Northern Illinois who his type is kind of just dying out. His name's Eugene German.
I just interviewed him.
Oh my god! What the hell? All right,
I had interviewed him probably a month ago. I started.
How did I miss this?
Yeah, somebody had mentioned him, and I started watching his stuff, and I'm like, oh wow, this guy could score. He's just a score. I mean, he averaged 20 his sophomore, junior, and senior year. He's just a bucket. So I just interviewed him maybe a month ago. Yeah.
Dude, oh my god. Yeah, no, he's an incredible person. Like,
yeah, he's awesome. His story is great too. Like he only got one scholarship and he took advantage of it and wound up, having a tremendous career.
Wow. Well, that is you just keep stumping me. What if I give you a New York guy? A guy who played in New York for college?
Maybe because New York basketball, especially college basketball, has been really bad. So maybe you might stump me on a New York guy.
All right, Mustafa Heron from St. John's.
Okay, yeah.
There we go. I finally got someone.
I might have heard of him, but it doesn't pop up the way the other guys pop up.
He was a top 20 recruit at Auburn when he came there, I think 4 years ago. He transferred to St. John's. I think it was because to be closer to his mom who was sick. And he's a 3-and-D type. That's pretty much the story with him. Always battled injuries, didn't really get to shine. But I think he's a diamond in the rough.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I'm glad it took 4 tries to get it.
Yeah, but going back to the Eugene, I hope he gets drafted because he could score. I mean, that's one thing for sure. He could score. And, I interviewed Leslie Varner.
He's a great guy.
He's awesome too, and I keep messing up this guy's name. Asai guy. He led the country in blocks. The Florida International. Yeah. I interviewed him too, and he's really cool too. So those three guys, I root for those guys. I'm biased because I interviewed them, but I like their tape too. You watch more of the tape, you're like, these guys, we've seen a lot of guys in the NBA go from small schools and become stars. So I'm rooting for all those guys. But man, this was fun, bro. I really appreciate it. I know we had some technical difficulties yesterday, but I'm happy we finally got it sorted out and we were able to do this today. But first, before I let you go and stuff, tell me a little bit about how you got started with all your stuff, because like I said, I'm a big fan of yours. You know, I'm happy that I got to follow you on Twitter, and you know, we have interactions. But tell me how you got started with Mavs draft and all that.
Yeah, so I'm glad our paths crossed. Definitely one of the better follows on Twitter too for you.
Thank you.
So I actually, it was kind of an accident. I was just bored in college. I was in the basement in my library and like in my college library. Sorry, not in like a home library, but I was there and I was writing stuff. Just I love, I've always kept up with the NBA draft. That's been, one of my favorite passions. And while I was there, I was like, I need a place to like put all these words. I was posting on Reddit and stuff, which just like that doesn't, vindicate me if I'm right on any of these guys. And
Right.
so I started it. Literally, the first thing I wrote about was Donovan Mitchell. I'm like, this guy, get him on the Mavs. He's a sleeper. People are sleeping on, Long, everything about him, and obviously he's good now. And it just kind of took off there. I didn't expect it to ever take off. I didn't think I was, worth a follow or anything at the time. And now, I mean, it's exploded. And I just applied for credentials the next year, and I was like, let's see what happens. And now I've been going to events, things like that. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah. We talked about that yesterday as far as getting credential and going to the a combine, right? You went to one of the, like, I mean, that's awesome. The fact that, something you just put your mind to it and then boom, like sometimes you just don't know, like you just have to put it out there. And look, you put it out there. You were big on Donovan Mitchell. I sad he didn't go to the Knicks, but they don't listen to me. Sometimes I wish they just listened to me because I would change that team like that. But they didn't listen to me with Donovan Mitchell. But whatever. But yeah, you sometimes just got to put it out there, and you never know who follows, and you be able to have a nice following. And I'm sure you're continuing to. It sucks this year that you're not gonna be able to go to any of these combines because obviously coronavirus, but it's still great what you're doing, and I'm rooting for you big time, for continue because like I said, one of my favorite NBA draft. I'm a draft nerd too. I absolutely love the NBA draft, but I got 2 kids, so I don't have the time to do the stuff you get to do. Nerd out that much because I would love to just go in and just dissect these players like crazy. But that's why I like to follow guys like you and other guys like Ethan Piotr, all these you draft nerds that I could get more information about. But that's tremendous. So where can people find you? Where can people find your work? Go.
Yeah, so on Twitter at MavsDraft and then mavsdraft.com.
Awesome. But like I said, Richard, man, this was fun, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm happy we had great connection today. The Wi-Fi was 100%, so that's awesome. This was fun, bro. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'll make sure to post all, I'll have all the links so people can follow you and follow your work. But thank you for coming on, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. So on that note, another NBA draft show. Going to have more. Like I said, I'm also going to be working on getting more NBA draft prospects on the show and more NBA draft analysts as we get, I keep forgetting when the draft is. It feels like it gets pushed back every time. But going to have more. We'll definitely be talking more. And on that note, make sure, be safe. Richard, you be safe, man. And take care, guys.
You as well.